Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain is a top-down, 2D, hack-and-slash revenge porn fantasy. Like any good vampire story, it's set in shitty medieval Europe, and you spend most of your time fighting wolves and prostitutes. I first played Blood Omen on the Ps1 when I was a little kid, but I didn't make it very far because the game was too hard, and I didn't actually own it. Now I'm older, medicated, and I have an emulator full of cheat codes, so I thought it would be a good time to go back. This video will be full of spoilers for Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain. That is the warning. Do you want to know what stuck with me for all those years between my first dip into Blood Omen and now? What? Okay, I couldn't hear your response and it's my video, so I'm just going to tell you. It was the atmosphere. It's deep and moody. In some places the background tracks include the shrieks of the dying and voices you can just almost make out.
You are lost beyond all hope. You cannot see my plight, for you have so shut your eyes. What will become of our love? I see only damnation.
Kain, brought to life by Simon Templeman, has lived in a little corner of my brain ever since I first played it.
Reputed to have been ripped from the chest of the greatest vampire to have ever existed, Janos Audron, the heart of darkness restores vampiric unlife. Life is precious, Janos discovered, as it was torn, throbbing and bleeding from his own body. Hunger and weakness are no bar to vengeance's call. I would find my slayers and send them back whence I came.
And I can't tell you how many times I've quoted these lines. In its best moments, Blood Omen can weave together an immersive soundscape, though there are some struggles. Tracks have a tendency to not loop properly, and sounds have no variation in pitch or speed. There's no accounting for distance from the source of a sound as far as I can tell, so the guy moaning in agony across the screen will be at the same volume as the one right next to you, and this can be amusing, especially in more crowded rooms.
Please, help me, kind sir! Please, help me, kind sir! Please, help me, kind sir!
In this game, you play as a giant mosquito. You suck on your enemies to heal yourself, and you do it a lot. You can suck on them in bed, in a dark cave, or right in the middle of the street. Hell, you can suck just about everyone you meet, whole groups at once after you've practiced enough. But just like real life, you've got to be careful who you suck on, or it can make you sick. You also open up a pile of equipment, items, spells, and transformations to bring death in new ways, including the Soul Reaver. No, not that one. It's a sword, and it attacks your ears as it smites Kain's foes. I won't go line by line through the story, partially because there are people much better qualified to do that, but also because it isn't very clearly communicated to the player. Large portions of Blood Omen seem to have been retrofitted through sequels, so most of what I might have thought was happening could be wrong anyway. The game opens with a cutscene of a very lumpy vampire devastating some people we do not know for reasons we do not know, but he's really wrecking their shit. It's a confusing way to start things, but I think the point was more to establish this feeling of it could be you rather than to actually set up the story. That badass super vampire is not you. You are a weary traveler of noble blood from distant Korhagen.
No mug of ale for a weary traveller from distant Korhagen? I can reward you well, for I am of noble blood.
See, he leaves the bar and gets immediately murdered, now burning in hell for the sin of being stabbed to death with a blade that wasn't kosher. Kain is offered a chance for revenge and quickly agrees. It doesn't take him long to cut through the men who made him less watertight, but the necromancer tells us that those toothless peasants might have killed us, but someone else made them do it. It's actually the Circle of Nine, a group of essentially demigods who should be our true targets. We're not told why Kain was murdered, but Kain is not big on needing a reason to kill people. First, we visit the Pillars of Nosgoth and talk to the ghost of Ariel. No, not that one. This one used to be the chosen of the Pillar of Balance. In this world, the Pillars choose mortals to give special powers, and those chosen protect the world from evil. They are collectively called the Circle of Nine. She tells us the current circle are all going insane after being magically corrupted by one of their own who was stricken with grief after she was murdered. We have to kill them all to allow the Pillars to select new champions and restore the balance. With the goalposts sufficiently moved, we're off to kill the gods and anything that tries to get in the way. But hear me out on this. I was already down to do that. We established before Kain got to the Pillars that the Circle were the ones who murdered him, even though we have no evidence to support that beyond the word of this particularly trustworthy-looking guy. As a player, I didn't need you to give me an out on it being evil, and I didn't need to save the world. No part of Kain's character lends itself to being a hero. I mean, I'm slurping up everyone I see like Ps1, and for some reason, when I drain a man of his vital fluids, I start at the groin and work my way up to the throat. I assume that's so he can watch it happen. I'm not the good guy in this story, but that doesn't matter. We've got our first target. His name is Nephraptor, and he's the source of the corruption, and from what I can tell, he plans to destroy the world by jerking off and crying in a giant version of his own head on top of a mountain. And I get that, man. I've had some bad breakups too. When you finally make it to his place, you might realize he's not the only one in the room. You don't know it yet, but this guy is Malik. No, not that one. He's the guy from the opening cutscene who was supposed to protect the Circle. Turns out that's still his job and he's really good at it. Apparently he's never let a single member of the Circle be killed since that last time he let almost all of them be killed. So for your first boss fight, this one's gonna be really, really hard.
So, Malik, have you come to fail the Circle once more? Leave, Paladin. I do not need your protection. Come, Kain. Come, share my pain.
That's right. He doesn't need help, so you kill him. After this, we're sent to take out Malik. We're told we have to defeat him to be able to get to the other Circle members.
But first I had to defeat their shepherd, Malik, defender of the Nine.
Kain tries to fight him, but since he got cursed and doesn't have a body anymore, he doesn't die so easily, and Kain has to run away. On the way out, he steals some axes and decides to become a lumberjack like that guy from Dexter. We're told we need to meet with an oracle, and we'll ask him how to kill Malik. The oracle tells us to talk to the guy from the intro cutscene who beat Malik in the first place. He lives right over there in the massive, gothic-looking castle in the swamp. Even Kain thinks it's kind of weird for him to choose to live there.
Strange that Vorador would choose a dwelling so perilous to him. The swamp could only offer a vampire hazard and pain.
We break into his house, kill all of his servants, eat all of his food, and the big guy doesn't even care. He gives us a ring so we can give him a ring if we need his help. Kain then ignores that part where we were told to kill Malik first.
Find Malik and destroy him. Only then will the Circle fall.
Yeah, really, they tell you twice. At first I thought this wasn't being internally consistent, but now I think the idea was that if Kain went to the next Circle member, he knew Malik would show up anyway. He does just that, and Kain calls his new vampire buddy. And chases after the Circle members. When you get back, Malik's already dead. And this is kind of a sticking point for me. At this point, Malik's the only real antagonist we know in the story. Vorador, the vampire we summoned to fight him, beat him in the distant past at the height of his power. But when Kain meets Vorador, everything he has to say about the guy is about how he's fallen into sloth and decadence and how he wouldn't let it happen to him. But we summon him to fight a stronger version of Malik than he originally fought, and he beats him alone. We don't even know how. I don't know if it was difficult for Vorador, but Kain sure couldn't do it. It would have been nice if we could have somehow been a part of the process. Maybe they were fighting somewhere we couldn't get to, and Vorador was losing, and we managed to drop something on Malik that allows him to be defeated. Or better than that, once we get the legendary blade that specifically eats souls, we could have killed Malik with it, and it would kind of close the loop on Kain becoming the biggest bad who ever batted. I don't know. Being critical is easy, writing things is really hard, it just feels like kind of a missed opportunity. Also, when I say that Kain has a black sword that eats souls, I'm suddenly realizing that he's Elric. Elric is a good book series, you should check it out if you like reading, I guess. So, the only real established character of conflict is killed off-screen by a better vampire than you. The rest of the circle members are rapid fire, they're barely characters, and they're pretty forgettable. It's even worse if you're playing on the PlayStation version. The PC got a few extra lines of dialogue to fill in some blanks. Here's what I mean. This is the PlayStation version.
The Pillar of the Mind. The Pillar of Dimension. The Pillar of Balance.
And the PC version.
The Pillar of the Mind, protected by the Mentalist Nupraptor. The Pillar of Dimension, protected by the Planar Azimuth. The Pillar of Balance, once defended by Ariel. The pillars choose their own.
If you're like me, and you were playing the PlayStation version of the game, you might have never even heard the names of the people you're out to kill until you meet them. But remember, these are supposed to be the champions of the pillars. They are practically the gods of this world. Even more than that, they're the targets of our personal journey of retribution, and I don't know about you, but I have a hard time fluffing my vengeance boner if I don't even know who I'm revengeancing. Kain does seem to know that, and it's kind of a strange place to be in as a player. I don't really know where I'm going with this, and I don't even want to call it a criticism, because it makes Kain feel like a more established character in the setting, but it also negatively tweaks my immersion a little bit because I'm out of the loop like a third wheel, like I'm just following Kain around through the story while also controlling him. That's just kind of weird. You're in the main loop of the game now, and I hate to say it, but this is the point where it started to really wear me down. Based on the style and some of the UI features, I really thought I was stepping into some kind of action game, maybe like a lighter Diablo, but the combat is really clunky, and unless you're in your wolf form, you move really slowly across a massive, mostly uninteresting world. Secrets are all over the place, but the majority aren't really worth much. You get a target and you take a long walk fighting respawning enemies, collecting power-ups, solving simple puzzles to get through dungeons until you can vanquish the boss. You get a legendary magical sword, and the final fight is an evil wizard who summons minions but then has a second phase where he transforms into a buff monster who teleports around and... Hold on, that sounds familiar. Wait a minute. Well, in fairness, since Blood Omen came out in 1996, it was probably more like... But I love Wind Waker. This is probably an obvious comparison to long-time fans of Legacy of Kain, but I did my best to go in blind, and I didn't even make the connection until long after the credits had rolled, and I was chewing on the game trying to write this script. Because I had an expectation for the kind of game Blood Omen would be, even while trying to be kind to its more dated game design, I was disappointed, and I meant what I said a few minutes ago. The combat is really clunky, really slowly, it's a massive, mostly uninteresting world. But once that idea clicked into place, that I was playing great value Legend of Zelda with eyeliner, the things that frustrated me at first started to make a little bit more sense and bother me a little less. I was feeling pretty smart until I looked online and found out that this was not an uncommon comparison. Blood Omen asks the question, what if Link had daddy issues? Ariel is our captive princess, and Mortanius, our final boss, can only be Ganon, but I admit that's a shaky comparison at best. The Soul Reaver is our master sword, and I'm sure anyone with enough tinfoil hats could keep going, but that's as far as I care to chase that train of thought. None of this is to say anything bad about Blood Omen. A Link to the Past released in 1991, and it's held up by many as one of the greatest games of all time. Everything humans create is built on top of the things that came before us. Even this video is my weird way of smashing together the essay styles of some of my favorite creators. The point of the comparison is that once I was aware of it, I started to enjoy the game a lot more. I had to replay large sections of it to get footage for this video, because I wasn't recording the first time, and that shift in perspective really helped me to find the fun. The overworld between the dungeons is more padded than I would like, but I think that's a symptom of wanting the world to feel larger and more real. The bosses, usually the Circle of Nine, but one is replaced with the Toymaker, still aren't really fleshed out before coming in contact with them, but how often do you learn about a Zelda boss before entering their room? And that's never bothered me before. Most of the 100 secrets might not be anything special, but if it was 50 rupees to buy a consumable item, would it still be lame? I think the only reason that even felt disappointing to me was because it was advertised like it was a selling point, and that's probably more on a marketing team than the developers. Blood Omen isn't just copying the Legend of Zelda template, either. Wikipedia says, Silicon Knights designed Blood Omen as a game which adults would want to play, intending to evolve the action role-playing genre and bring artistic cinema to video game consoles. The game itself advertises over 100 hours of gameplay and 100 secrets, leaning into that idea of artistic cinema. The creators wrote a very complex world. Kain's hometown is ravaged by plague and everyone is dead. The largest city in the realm is completely overrun by demons and burning to the ground. A giant fleshy tower in the north is surrounded by a force field that is turning all living creatures into freakish mutants that are destroying the countryside. An invading army is amassing on the northern border, and the king is too busy mourning over the body of his only daughter, whose soul was stolen and trapped in a doll by some weird old man in a toy store. I haven't even mentioned the time travel. Actual playtime will sit closer to the 12 to 20 hour mark, and despite the fact that these are really awesome hooks, they also feel rushed through, with very little build-up or payoff. It's kind of like playing in someone's first D&D campaign when they've got a lot of ideas, but they haven't really learned to edit themselves yet. I might have a problem with that myself looking at this script. And by the way, none of those things I just said is side content. That's all main storyline. Once we're done with those, we finally return to the pillars and find out that the necromancer who brought you back was behind your murder all along. After killing him, you're told that you are the final circle member, champion of the Pillar of Balance, and you have a choice. Sacrifice yourself for the world and allow it to be healed, or rule over the land as the sole remaining circle member and doom Nosgoth forever. Now tell me, viewer, with what you know of Kain...
The wind carried screams from the west. I couldn't help but smile. Someone else in this world was suffering more than I. I would not be kind to the denizens that lurk here. They would taste my steel, and I their blood.
Which of these options do you think he would choose? The Kain canon seems to agree, and going forward the series assumes that he chose to rule, and that's Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. It's a dark, edgy Legend of Zelda-like that feels like it bit off a bit more than it could chew, but still did some cool things. If you want to play it for yourself sometime, you can save yourself a lot, and I mean a lot, of frustration by playing the PC version of the game. It turns out the PlayStation version has well-known terrible loading times, made much worse by how many loading screens you have to go through while performing even the simplest actions. Not just changing areas, but changing weapons, items, armor, spells, forms, updating your hotbars, saving the game, even opening the map, which is 4 separate pauses. I got you an example. Here's Kain changing weapons.
Iron sword.
Aside from the problems loading, the field of view is incredibly restrictive. This is made worse by the fact that if you're playing zoomed out, your frame rate will spend most of its time pretending to be my old youth pastor and hovering around the teens. The PC version still has some slowdown, but I think there are patches that can help that. I read good things about something called Varrock. It looks like it fixes a lot of problems, makes the game look better, and even adds subtitles, which I feel should be a legal requirement at this point, but what do I know? If you're interested, you can get Blood Omen on GOG pretty cheap. It's normally around $7, but it goes down to less than $1. If you have limited time like me, I think you might be better served watching a lore video. There is no chance I would have made it through this game without cheat codes, not because it's hard, but I really struggled to enjoy the combat, and I was really only in it for the story. If I wasn't planning on making this video, I probably would have bounced off it again I know a lot of people absolutely love Blood Omen, and I can see where that's coming from. The seeds of something really cool are just under the surface. It is unfortunate, though, that the game is held back a lot by the hardware that it was created for. While I'm really looking forward to more of the series, I'm glad to be able to say that I am finally done with Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain.